Yeah, I'm so excited to be talking to you. I had such an incredible experience with your sound bath at Dreamtopia a few weeks ago. I wanted to talk to you about it, but it was such a whirlwind of a conference those 2 days. I've never experienced anything like that. And I was like, I need to talk to Shanila about what I went through. It was actually quite supernatural. It was kind of crazy. And I knew nothing about sound baths before the conference, and I did a bit of research. And I'm kind of naturally a skeptic at heart. But I was, before I went to the conference, I was a bit curious, and so I did some research. And this is rooted in science, and I was fascinated by this whole concept of 432 hertz and what it does to your brain. And anyway, so that first experience, I went in very open-minded. I just wanted to, be open and see what happens. And but before we dive into my experience, I'd love for you to explain what a sound bath is.
No, that's amazing that you were able to have such a profound experience, and it's pretty difficult to explain what a sound bath is without, putting somebody through that experience, because it's so different for each person.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a laying down or sitting experience with sound vibrations and frequencies that help you get to a super deep meditative state. And so you could feel like you're very static, very relaxed, very peace. And sometimes you might see colors, sometimes you might go on a journey, sometimes you might fall asleep. But basically you get all the benefits of super deep meditation in this part of our brain called theta. And so it's a really healing and relaxing state to be in.
Yeah, it was certainly all those things that first day that I did it. What was the instruments that you used? There was one you started out that evening, and it was, the way I imagine it, it sounded to me like pebbles kind of crashing on the ocean.
Yeah.
Like waves crashing pebbles onto the shore. That's what it sounded like to me.
Yeah, that's the ocean drum. It's basically exactly that. It just sounds like you're at the ocean.
Mhm. Yeah, that was super relaxing. And then you moved into gongs.
And I moved into a gong, and this particular gong was a Jupiter gong, and it's tuned to 187 hertz frequency. Basically activates this electromagnetic part of the top of your head, also known as the crown chakra. So this particular frequency is known to help you open up and be in this state of expansion. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion, it's the planet of fire, it's the biggest planet in our solar system, and likewise it interacts with this part of our electromagnetic field that aligns and opens you up to receive. So it's one of the biggest, most important part of this meditation experience, to be in the surrendering allowance state. Because if we are very closed off or, coming in with a side eye, we can have a different experience than, being in this open, receiving allowance.
It's kind of like prepping you. Yeah, I love that.
And that's why we go through a little bit of the breathing in the beginning too, because it just brings your mind and attention to the space where you are. Like, I'm here right now at this space. This is what I'm doing, even if I feel very excited or I feel nervous or I feel whatever it is that's going on in your mind, your to-do list. And, a lot of us have trouble meditating. Like, I am somebody who has a lot of trouble, just sitting still and meditating in the traditional way. So this is kind of the cheater's way to meditate, basically. You get to have all the benefits of meditation without putting in all the effort to get to the state of that. And because of that, you are in such a powerful place to kind of navigate that journey for yourself. So you can set intentions at the beginning to have a very specific journey, or you can kind of just be in this relaxed state to allow yourself to see what's coming up for you. Because it works so much on your subconscious, on your physical body and your subconscious, that sometimes things come up for you that you didn't even know that you were carrying with you. That's one of the most beautiful parts of this experience for most people, I think.
That's exactly what happened to me that first sound bath. After you started the crystal bowls, so, you did what was the first instrument called? An ocean
drum.
An ocean, yeah. We started with the ocean drum. We were all sitting in our seats in the theater, getting very, relax to the sound, and then the gong, which, like you said, kind of like preps us. And then you started the crystal bowls, and I'm pretty sure you must have hit 432 hertz, or something happened where I was sitting there with my eyes closed in that darkened theater, and I started crying. And it wasn't sobbing, but there were tears streaming down my face. And the only way I can describe it, it was as if a pain body was being dislodged. Like that was the image that came into my mind as I was, as my eyes were closed. And it was a really beautiful experience. First it was happening, and I thought, what is going on? Right? Like, I've never experienced this. And I'm like you. When I try to meditate, I just have this mind that is racing. It won't stop. It's very difficult for me to sit still, even for 5 minutes. And what's interesting is my hearing is my super strength. Like all of us, I think, out of our 5 senses, there's one that's more dominant.
For sure.
And my hearing is definitely more dominant. Like my eyes are horrible. It's like I'm almost legally blind, but I think my body makes up for it with the hearing. But I was sitting there. I had tears rolling down my face, and I felt like something was being released from my body. Wow. After that happened, I was very struck with, I feel like I just experienced something very supernatural and beautiful and healing. You've worked with tons of people. Is this unusual? Is this like not surprising to you, or like what happened to me?
Yeah. So if you think about kind of the language that we have in our everyday world to describe the fact that we actually carry emotions in our physiology, we say things like, I had a gut feeling, or I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach, or butterflies in my stomach, a burden on my shoulders. I was hot with anger. I was heated up. That's a cold person. And, a weight's been lifted off of me, weak in the knees. We're describing all of this stuff that's emotion that we're feeling physiologically in our body. So in the workshop, we heard so many people talking about this state of flow, like being in the state of alignment, the state of flow. Everybody's making this movement where they're, taking their hands from the top of their head all the way down their body, just to the center. They're talking about flow. So if you imagine flow being a stream, right, like of water flowing through the stream, and a tree falls in the middle, that water is going to have a harder time to go to the other side of this tree. It's going to have to figure out how to go under this tree, around this tree, over this tree. Maybe it has to accumulate right before the tree, before it goes over it. It has to figure out a different way to go around it. And that's the same thing as emotions. Like when we carry that in our body, we're basically acting as a tree that blocks the flow of our body. So the frequencies, the sound works 2 ways in our body. There's the vibrations that can be measured at the cellular level, and then there's the frequencies that are measured at the wave level. So these frequencies are kind of working, these frequencies and vibrations are working hand in hand to move these blockages by aligning these energy centers. So there's different ways to kind of explain that. There's the hyper science component, and there's the hyper spirituality component where, we have less of concrete proof, so to say. But if you're imagining emotions being held in your body, like a burden on your shoulder, or a lot of women especially tend to carry their grief, if we're experiencing grief or heartache, in the lower back. And when we get our power taken away, when we feel helpless, we feel that in the base of our ribs. That's where we carry our power. So these are kind of like, more woo language to explain that, but we have that language in our everyday world to explain the fact that we feel emotions physiologically in our body. So it's not surprising or like totally unique that, you feel these blockages, this literal tree getting chopped up into pieces, or, a bulldozer coming and removing that tree. So that flow, that alignment, that, whatever language we want to assign to it, that water in the stream can have a more efficient way to get through. when this emotion sits in our body, like if that tree were to sit in that stream, maybe it would start to rot. Maybe, leaves from that tree would start to accumulate and block other parts of it. So if you're thinking about your alignment as an energy channel, we heard these languages being used at the workshop as well. You're a channel that, your source is coming through to you. All of this stuff is like woo language, but if you think about it physiologically, a lot of the diseases and a lot of the ailments that we feel are from an overactive or underactive process of our systems. So when these blockages sit on top of our systems, like a tree in the stream, we are functioning a little bit out of sync. So frequencies like 432, this is one of the really, really helpful and great. There's different ones that work on different things, but 432 is the miracle tone. So that one specifically works on the center chakras, the center meridians, the energy points, the nervous system. So it is really, really, really powerful for kind of breaking apart the tree pieces. And the order that the bowls are played, the order that the entrainment and the binaural beats are worked in with the crystal bowls aren't just by accident. There aren't just like random configurations of sounds and like prettiness. There is a very specific entrainment process that allows people to go to that process. So as I was saying before, like a lot of what we do in the beginning to just breathe and center in is to kind of set the baseline so that you could have a more optimum experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. The second night of the workshop, were you doing the exact, you were using the same instruments, but was it the same pattern as the night before?
It wasn't. It was a slightly different pattern, and it was a longer time frame. So the process of getting to the certain brain state, the theta state, is a little bit longer, a little bit different, and the come down of it's a little bit different. So shorter time can give you a more quick and
intense,
bam, like
right?
boom, like a boom experience, which can be like super jarring too. So it's kind of just a balance between like how hard and fast you expose somebody to that. And each of the bowls, well, I had 7 bowls with me that day. So each of the bowls correspond with a certain part of your nervous system or a certain part of your chakra. So the different combinations of that are actually working on a very specific part of your body. So if we're especially in the first day, I knew I only had just a few minutes to play, not a lot of time to talk and explain. So it was really just about getting the maximum impact in the shortest amount of time. And then the second day was for a more longer-term effect. So a lot of the people who have written these since then didn't have such a, valiant experience the first day or second day, but they had a noticeable impact in the coming days after. So that's kind of like the micro influence of the longer-term playing that can happen from sound baths as well.
That's amazing. I think it's amazing because my first experience was very different from my second. So that
what
first
was your
one was
second like?
So the second one, I'm thinking you got to 432. I was very relaxed and I was open again to whatever, like the day before I experienced some crying and I'm like, okay, I have no idea what to expect this time, but I just want to be open. And the only way I can explain it, I went somewhere. Like that, it sounds so kooky, but my eyes were closed. I got relaxed. You did the waves crashing and the gong and the bowls, and the next thing I knew, it was like I went to another dimension, or I was in another frequency, but it was very peaceful wherever I was, and yeah, it was crazy. And then when I kind of came to, it wasn't like a jarring, I'm waking up. It was very seamless. It was, the image in my mind was like ink that you drop into clear water and just kind of bleeds into the water. And that's kind of what I felt like when I was coming to. And then when I opened my eyes, it was so crazy. I was like, whoa, where did I go? Like I wasn't in that theater sitting with all those people. And I don't know how long I was gone, but it wasn't scary. there's no fear. It was just like total bliss and peace. And
awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was so supernatural.
Oh, you were traveling. You were traveling.
I was totally traveling.
There you go.
And yeah, I think that whole weekend, I just felt just super blissed out. And again, I'm a very skeptical, like show me the science type of person, very curious. I ask a lot of questions. So for me to even be talking about like a sound bath and these crazy supernatural experiences, again, that's why I was like so excited to talk to you. Like, where did I go and what happened to me? And so the second night was totally different from the first.
So did you have any recurring themes coming up for you in that weekend?
Recurring like experiences from the sound bath?
No, just in general.
I just felt, for using that word aligned, I felt more aligned. That conference as a whole was something that was very life-changing and confirmed a lot of things that I had been feeling and kind of navigating. And the sound bath just added to that alignment and that feeling of, just the feeling of like everything's going to be okay. Like we just worry too much. We as human beings, we worry too much and we're not living in the present. And, as somebody who's always thinking about the future, I think that's kind of how I'm wired. Always like striving, always wondering, okay, what's next? What's my next accomplishment? What do I need to do? Something like a sound bath was so important for me, just to be present and not to think so much about where do I need to go next. Yeah, I think those were some of the residual effects I felt afterwards. And it's definitely opened my mind to want to explore more for my health and wellness. And I don't know if it's just I'm much more sensitive to it now. Like when your attention is being directed somewhere, suddenly you feel like everything that you come across in life is contributing and helping you find, yourself in that path. And I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about, I guess you call it natural healing. And I was watching this great documentary. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Netflix. It's called Heal.
Heal? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So good. My husband and I are halfway into it, and I'm like, wow, we found this documentary. And, it was made in 2017, so it's been around for a couple of years, but it wasn't on my radar before, right? And now it is on my radar. I was listening to a Goop podcast, and they were interviewing Joe Dispenza. I'm just fascinated by quantum physics and how that fits into health and wellness, and that we are energy beings. It's not just that we are these bodies. There's a lot more going on, right? I guess I'm kind of starting this new journey of like finding myself, but in a new way, and it's really cool. So how does that work? Like if someone were to integrate a like sound bath and relaxation and what you practice into what they want to do, like how often does somebody do this? Is it like yoga where you go however many times you want a week, or how does it work?
Yeah, there's no like overdosing on sound baths, fortunately. It's basically as you need it or as you please. And I'll tell you a little bit about how I started doing it is, well, I first experienced the sound bath at this music festival. It's called Lightning in a Bottle. It's in California in about 2015. And I just saw a bunch of people with their gongs and crystal bowls, like doing all their woo stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. It just, like people were laying down and I'm like, okay, I'm always up for a good nap, So I just, I went to nap and it totally changed my life. I didn't know what happened. I kind of caught just the end of it. It was one of these ones where you can like go in and out, and it was about an hour long. I probably caught the last 15 minutes of it, and it completely just like relaxed me. And I didn't know the science behind it. I didn't know in all of this. And it was in a time of my life where I was going through so much transition, like dealing with death, dealing with, a breakup of 10 years, moving and all this stuff, just a lot of transition stuff where I was feeling like very low and very busy in my head. And just laying down, kind of experiencing this without expectation totally shifted like my idea of the calm that I could experience. I just didn't know that there was that level of calm that could be attainable. and so at that time I had also been in this like very busy research job and experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiousness, and a lot of responsibility just falling on my shoulders. And what I ended up doing was getting this Tibetan bowl. This Tibetan bowl, I was in work in Oakland, and I don't know why or how I ended up in this Nepali Tibetan shop, but I did, and I ended up leaving with this beautiful bowl and just a really small, hand welded, just beautiful little designs, and I spent a lot of time picking it. And now I understand why I spent a lot of time picking it, because you get attracted to the frequencies that you need. So sometimes you get called to certain ones that are more healing for you, just like our ancestors and animals in the animal kingdom. They know what to eat, they know what to take for medicine, they have some kind of intuition around it. And some part of me knew I needed this frequency of that bowl, and so I would just carry this bowl around with me in my backpack, to be honest. I would ding it a few times in the morning. I had no time to do meditation. I didn't have a practice like that. I don't do any yoga. I don't have all this root stuff in my practice. But in the morning I would just ding it, and I would immediately feel just chill.
Wow.
Your brain is going up and down, and it would just bring it to this equilibrium. And I still didn't know any science behind it or whatever. I was whatever this is, it works, so I'm just going to go with it. And I started doing it at nighttime, and I noticed that my sleep was getting improved. My sleep was better. I had insomnia for so long, and that in itself is all the quote unquote proof that I needed for myself to just be okay, there's something valid here that is working for me, so I'm just going to keep at it. And then I would take it around with me to my stressed out friends, and they'd be oh, I'm so stressed out about this or my job or my relationship or da-da-da. I'm hold on, wait a second. And I would have it in my backpack, pull it out, and they're rolling their eyes. And, basically your brain can't make sense of these frequencies. Your brain literally cannot make sense of these frequencies. So it's called a binaural beat. It is, at first your brain is still thinking, but it just hits one point where it can't make sense of the sound, so it shuts up. And that's the beauty of it. So I would just ding around to different people, and they're wow, this is so relaxing, and I don't know what happened, but I feel so relaxed and whatever. And then in 2 weeks I quit my job and I just became a sound healer. I'm this is what I'm doing. I feel called to it. I feel purposeful, and it has so much deep meaning and things that I've been able to experience through the use of sound, the way that I've been able to work with veterans, with people who have high trauma in their life, trauma victims, rehab victims, people in rehab, and I work at the women's shelter, just bring this modality to people who have such a hard time finding peace and calm within themselves and are holding on to so much emotional baggage within their bodies. And it's not always enough to come around and, give talk therapy and to see, what people's needs are. It's just I have no explanation for you. I have no lecture for why this is or this isn't going to work for you. You just sit and experience it and let it do what it's going to do for you. And that's what is so beautiful to me, because it will always give the person who needs what they need without
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, without having to curate that experience for it. And, some people really do need that science word. They want explanations. They want to know about how it's working on the cells. And there's these cool water studies where they play certain frequencies to water and flash freeze the molecules. And there's certain frequencies make perfect mandalas, perfect molecular structures in water, and certain other ones make really dissonant looking ones. And so if you think about the fact that we're 70% water, it has implications on the frequencies that we're absorbing, that we're taking in. So some people really need that kind of explanation, and the electrodermal activities of byproducts like the mood and the anxiety and the insomnia. And other people are wow, I floated off into space and I tasted colors, and then I, got this download from this alien being, and, and now I know what to do with my life. And it's okay, cool, I don't know what to say. I don't know. But cool, it falls on every part of that spectrum. And it's you can't curate that for anyone. It's just it's here, you take it, you do what it is that you need to do with it, and that's it. Yeah, there's no overdoing it. the side effect is that you might feel like really high, and that's pretty normal. Then you might have like a lot of energy afterwards, just because there's so much recalibration going in your body, like realignment. There's a lot of things in your gut. There's a lot of gut flora that now we're learning that, you know, we used to believe that neurotransmitters were only in your head, so your happiness chemicals were only processed in the neurotransmitters in your head. But now we're learning that it exists in your gut too, that we have serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, a lot of feel-good happiness hormones that live right inside our gut. So these sounds, when they vibrate, when the sounds actually, you know, vibrate in the water of your body, they're releasing all these happiness chemicals right from your stomach. So you might feel just like ecstatic and happy and all the stuff. And there have been experiences like where I've just been really emotionally sad and kind of fighting myself from like feeling that, you know, I wasn't feeling it to heal it, and I needed to feel it and heal it and let it go. So it'll bring up different things that you're just storing inside your body. And sometimes people will feel like heat at the back of their neck or wherever it is that they're carrying their emotion. They'll feel it like balling up in this like sometimes unbearable heat, or it'll like vibrate. Some people's hands will vibrate. Some people will literally actually just usually experience this laying down. So sometimes people would like actually elevate, like not 100%, but like their hands and feet would elevate. Like they're going somewhere, but they have no awareness that this is happening, you know?
Wow.
So it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. I love that you're explaining, you know, just you bringing your sound healing to veterans and women's shelters and, I mean, all walks of life. I think that's so beautiful, and there's such a need. So what were you doing before you were doing the sound healing? You said you quit your job and you started doing this full time. You were doing some research, right? You're a scientist as well as a sound healer.
Yes, I was working for the National Science Foundation as part of a research team looking at what keeps girls interested in math and sciences. So we were looking at, you know, your mindsets on what you believe about yourself and how it prevents you from pursuing the things that you want depending on the beliefs that you have about yourself. So doing a lot of data collection and pretty cool, pretty high important things, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like you integrate, you know, your past work as a researcher with the work you're currently doing as a sound healer?
Absolutely. So I do a lot of specific work with people to work through internal blocks using sound. So that's something that I'm applying directly.
Do you work with children? Like I was telling my kids about this incredible sound bath experience that Mommy had, and both my kids were like, "Can we do it too?" and I wasn't sure, like, is this okay for children too, or is it?
It's totally okay for kids. Yeah, I work with teens more so than I work with younger kids. I do meditation workshops and introduce them to sound healing as a modality. And I would say that I think the earlier this can be like normalized in their lives, the pure experiences sound baths can bring them later on too. Yeah, I feel that it's such a beautiful tool to kind of just keep cleansing and keep reopening, you know, making sure that the trees and the leaves aren't blocking up the streams, because it's a constant process to kind of clean that up. It's not just like, oh, you remove that one tree and it's good, because there's always a little bit of residue and all this stuff. And, you know, when we're younger and we have less of that residue with us, it's cool to just like keep this river just flowing and abundant and
that's so
pretty
true.
good. Yeah. And you know what? A lot of kids especially, and adults too, fall asleep during the sound baths. But the good news is that even if you fall asleep and you start snoring, I think that's a compliment, but you still get the same benefits. Like the vibrations are working the same way on your body, and the frequencies are being received by your brain in the same way. So even if you're having kind of a more passive experience, you're still getting equally the same benefit. And I would recommend, you know, there's lots of different YouTube. You can just look up, you know, 432 hertz opening soundtracks, and there's a lot of good ones.
No, so you can, I mean, I'm thinking probably being in a room with the actual crystal bowls is optimal, but you can even listen to it on YouTube and get some of the same benefits.
Yeah, so when I was having a lot of sleep troubles, that's when I would fall asleep to these frequencies and kind of retrain myself to be able to sleep better in that way, and definitely notice lots of differences. And of course, you don't get the same effect and the vibrations, and like the entrainment isn't the same, but it is better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my last question is, so where does your journey take you next? When we were coordinating this interview, you said you were in Cambodia, and I'm assuming it was for research, or was it having to do with the sound healing?
I'm actually no longer at my research job, but I was there to learn chanting from some monks. So I was at some temples, and I was also just there to play.
One last thought I had was, as much as all this stuff might sound, like the word you use, woo-woo, to someone, this stuff has been around for thousands of years, really, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's really nothing new. So when a person like myself might be skeptical, well, if you look at the history of it, our ancestors, even before our ancestors' ancestors, they were tapping into something that was very, first of all, it's natural. It's like all around us, and it's within us. They're not that strange if you think about it, if they've been around for so long. Wouldn't you agree?
If we think across cultures, that things like chanting and things like using sound has existed across every and any culture. There's a practice of using your voice to channel something that we don't really have a concrete example of. And we use music, we use sound to, celebrate, to mourn, to signal war, to do so much that are very symbolic for us. But this has existed for as long as people have existed. We have ancient chanting. We have chanting in ways that activate certain parts of your nervous system that, they didn't used to describe it like that. But if we look back at it and actually study some ancient chants, we understand that our ancestors had so much more intuition and, so much intuition and information about like how these sounds were interacting with our own bodies, and we had a way to tap into that. And I think we're just circling back around, and yet, like you said, this isn't something new and something, created and all this stuff. Like 432 is, we're just putting words to things that have already existed. Like we're just trying to find concrete ways to give explanations for things that, were. Even the alphabet, even Sanskrit and Hindi and some more ancient-based languages, they're created from a way of how these consonants come out of your mouth. In the same way that chanting goes from like the deep, not cerebral, but the deep sounds that exist in your chest voice to your throat voice, to the back of your throat voice, to the back of your tongue, to the front of your tongue, to the more palatable words that are, at your lips. All of these alphabets had some kind of connotations around, how sound is expressed to our body, and they have different expressions. So, like, when we have chanting nowadays, we say, like, these sounds open up X, Y, and Z chakras, or these sounds correspond with blah, blah, blah parts of your nervous system. Like we have like some understanding of that again. But, when people were creating these languages, when people were making chants, when people were doing celebrations, they didn't have like a concrete way to explain it. They just had an intuition about it. So I think we're just coming full circle back around, and, this is just like another way to express the same thing.
I love that. Well, thanks for carving out time to talk about sound baths and 432 hertz and going different places. I look forward to keeping in touch, and I definitely want to continue on this journey, finding myself through sound.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you were able to have such a profound experience for you. And I think if anything else comes up for you, just, journal it out, and a lot of times you'll find some reoccurring themes, and that can just be a really beautiful clue.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks again for your time. I really feel
so
blessed
much.
by you. Okay. Have a great evening.
I'll catch you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye.